In this video, we are going to test our consensus endpoint that we just built out. So at this point, you should have all 5 of our nodes running so that we can test this endpoint. So what our consensus endpoint should do is when we call it on a specific node, it should confirm for us that that specific node has the correct blockchain data in it, and that node is in sync with the rest of the network. So how are we going to test this? In order to test this endpoint, we are going to create a network that consists of our first 4 nodes. We are then going to add 5 blocks to this network. After we add 5 blocks to this blockchain network, we are going to add our 5th node to the network. So at this point, our 5th node will be part of the network, but it will have the wrong data. Our first 4 nodes will have the correct 5 blocks in them, but our 5th node will only have the Genesis block in it. So in order to resolve this issue, we will hit our consensus endpoint. At that point, our consensus endpoint will run, and it should check all the other nodes in the network to make sure that we have the correct data. If we do not have the correct data on our 5th node, which we know it will not have the correct data, then the blockchain on this node should be replaced with the correct data. So let's give that a try. Our first step is to make a network that consists of our first 4 nodes. So let's do that now in Postman. So in Postman, we want to hit the register and broadcast node endpoints on our node that's hosted on 3001. And let's do this now. So we will add our 2nd node to the network and send that. And that worked. We will add our 3rd node to the network. And we will add our 4th node to the network. Cool. So now we should have a network that consists of our first 4 nodes. So if we refresh these, we can see all 4 nodes right here. That one is good. This one is good. Number 4 is good, and 5 should not be connected. Cool. So 5 has no network nodes. That's good. So now what we want to do is we want to mine a couple of blocks on our blockchain network, but not on our 5th node. So let's do that now. So we will hit localhost 3001/mine. So that's 1 block mined. Let's mine another block on 3003. Let's mine another one here. And let's mine one more on 3004. Cool. So now all of these nodes should have 5 blocks in them. Let's check. Our chain has 5 items. That's good. This one. 5 blocks right here in the chain. That's good. This one. 5 items. Good. And our 4th node has 5 items. Good. Which is all of the blocks in our chain. Cool. And our 5th node should have no extra blocks in it, just the Genesis block. Perfect. Cool. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to connect our 5th node to our blockchain network. So let's do that now. In Postman, we will send the request for 3005. Cool. So now 3005 should be connected to the network. Cool. So this is where our problem arises. You can see that 3005 is now a part of the network, but it does not have the correct chain data inside of the blockchain. It should have all 5 blocks that the other nodes have, but right now, node number 5 does not have the correct blocks. And this is exactly where our consensus endpoint comes into play. we should be able to hit our consensus endpoint and resolve this issue. After we hit our consensus endpoint on our 5th node, we should expect this blockchain to have all the same data as all the other nodes inside of our network. So let's try that now. So we will hit localhost 3005/consensus and run this. Cool. So we get this chain has been replaced, which is the one on node 3005. And we get the new blockchain data that should be on this node. So let's check our node that's hosted on 3005 and refresh this. Cool. So it looks like we have the correct data on node 3005 now, which is pretty awesome. By hitting our consensus endpoint, we have made it so that our node on 3005 now has the correct blockchain data, which is pretty cool. Now all of the nodes inside of our blockchain network should have the same exact data. Awesome. And just as one more example, if we were to hit localhost 3005 again now, the chain should not be replaced because it should have the correct data at this point. Let's try it. Cool. So we get the note that the current chain has not been replaced, which is what we expect. And we get the current chain back, which has the correct data. Awesome. So this is an example of how our consensus endpoint works, and it's pretty awesome and pretty powerful. We have the ability to correct a node inside of our blockchain if it has the wrong data, which is pretty awesome. At this point, I would encourage you to mess around with our consensus endpoint a little bit and test it in some different ways and add some transactions to our data and make sure that it resolves nodes that have the wrong data correctly. By testing this endpoint a little bit more, you will become more familiar with how it is working under the hood. It's pretty cool what we have built out at this point. All blockchains in the real world have a consensus algorithm, and we just built out our own consensus algorithm, which implements the longest chain rule, which is used on many real blockchains in real life. Cool. That's it for this section. And believe it or not, we have built out most of the functionality for our blockchain. In the next section, we are going to be building out a block explorer that we will be able to access on the browser. And our block explorer will allow us to interact with our blockchain through a user interface. Great. I'll see you in the next section.